Over the next 30 minutes, we're going to be discussing how to network during COVID-19 and what your goals should be in each meeting. We're also going to tackle some common but difficult interviewing questions that trips up a lot of people and how to avoid some of those most common mistakes. And for the first time ever, we're actually going to have a guest. Russ Roberts, former news anchor and global communications firm president, will be joining us. I'm going to ask him a lot of questions, and then, as always, we're going to roll into Q&A where Russ and myself will be available to answer questions. But with that, thanks so much for joining Hired How to Get the Jobs Weekly Review. My name is Tony Martin. I write a blog called howtogetthejob.blog. Please follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and subscribe to my YouTube channel, all Hired How to Get the Job. Instagram is more of a setting for daily tips and over a weekly theme. LinkedIn and Facebook are going to be more of weekly tips around that same theme. And then YouTube is where you can find all my content. So with that, let's move right into this week's agenda. So first, networking during COVID-19. So let's be honest here. Networking is much different today than it used to be, right? We used to be able just to go to a networking happy hour. We used to just be able to go to an event, go shake some people's hands. For God's sakes, we can't even touch someone anymore. So how do you network during this time? First of all, let's use our social media smartly, okay? Let's go to our LinkedIn. There's going to be events. I know there's at least one or two in my network, weekly social happy hours or weekly coffee hours or things like that, where you bring your coffee to your desk and you network with people who are in your network. Now, you can find those organizations out. If you're a project manager, then you should go look for those project management organizations. If you're an analyst or a finance person, well, then go find groups that you're going to be able to have something in common with. Because truthfully, right now, we're all trying to figure out ways to connect with people more than ever. And there's going to be lots of opportunity. And guess what? If it doesn't exist, create it. What do you think this is? This is an opportunity for you to network with other people, put your comments on the right-hand side. I'm more than happy for people to say who they are, where they're from on the right-hand side, and make sure that people know that you're looking or what your specialty is, because use every opportunity you have to try to meet new people. So that's the first thing. Use social media smartly, and then also, use the professional groups that fit your background. Now, when this whole thing opens up and we're able to do normal networking events, and I've done a couple last month, and I think we're probably closing up again, but get a list of the attendees prior to the event actually starting. Now, I've said this week to several clients that, look, when you're interviewing, that's networking. Even though you're interviewing for a specific job, you're still meeting a bunch of people inside that organization who have certain roles, and they may not be with that organization forever, right? So by you actually meeting those people, by you impressing those people, at the end of the day, even though it's a focused conversation around a specific role, it's really a focused conversation around you. And at what opportunity do you really have a chance to showcase your talents and skills as much as in any kind of environment than that? So when you do, when you go to an interview, you prepare. When you go to a happy hour, prepare. Talk to who the host is. Ask them, can I get a list of these attendees in advance? So that way, when you go meet those attendees, you can then introduce yourself. Hey, Russ, my name is Tony Martin. Weren't you the president of Myriad Communications? Oh, yeah, that was me, blah, 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 blah. You've built a relationship because they actually know that you've done some homework, and they're going to give you a little bit of time. So make sure you do your homework, get a list of the attendees in the advance. Also, when you're done with the event, when you're done with the interview, same exact thing. You send each one of these people a private note. Hey, thanks so much for your time last night, because we've all been to happy hour events where you build up a great relationship with somebody in front of you. And if you don't follow up with them the next day, a month from now, it's like you guys never met. It's like there's no relationship there. All that momentum you built last night talking about the Red Sox is now lost because you waited too long to follow up with a note and a funny little story or something that kept that relationship going and a dynamic going. So when you are networking, the follow-up is just as important as when you're interviewing the follow-up. Make sure that you do a follow-up, an individual message to them, something that's not generic, like, thanks so much for your time last night. It was great to get to know you. I guarantee that has just as much value as not following up at all. I would much rather a follow-up say, hey, thanks so much for meeting last night. It was really interesting to hear about your background. and I'm going to bother you this year as the Patriots lose or as your team loses or whatever. I mean, find some common connection. It doesn't always have to be about business, okay? If business is appropriate, you guys really hit a chord with something that you both work on professionally, then by all means. But often in these happy hour events, it's our personalities, it's our hobbies, it's those things that connect us, that make us want to talk to the person again. Because truthfully, do you really want to be working from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. to then go to a happy hour event and just talk about business again? Often those happy hour events are geared around social and political and hobbies and things like that. So hopefully that helps you a little bit on that, because I've gotten a lot of questions about networking recently and how to do that. Let's talk a little bit about some common questions that we get during the interview process and what are some common pitfalls, okay? And again, we're going to then have Russ on, and we're going to get to your Q&A, so feel free, start typing in your questions for the Q&A. I'll make sure that we prioritize all live questions first. So, common questions that you're going to experience in your interview process. First of all, everyone's going to give you this question. This is a guaranteed question. You ready? Do you have any questions for me? That's always going to happen. It's going to happen at the end, but it's going to happen. And if it's going to happen, you need to be prepared for it. And what I mean by that is you do not have the same questions for every single person in your interview panel. You're going to meet first maybe with the director, then you're going to meet with the vice president, and then you might meet with the CEO. You better not have the same question for all three of those people, because guess what's going to happen after the interview? They're going to talk, and they're going to say, hey, what did he ask you? Oh, he or she asked me the same thing. Like, it's gonna show that you're unprepared. So behind the scenes, you're gonna look like a mess. Maybe in the interview, they're gonna be really engaged. I think it's a great question, but guess what? You only had one question. You asked it 3 times. You already got the answer the first time. Now, in some situations, that question can actually help you, because when you say, do you have any questions for me? And you go, well, look at the person you're speaking with and think about what's important at their level. For example, if I'm interviewing for an analyst job and I'm talking to a manager, I'm guessing the manager probably doesn't care as much about the big picture of the organization. They care more about their siloed team. So in my questions for that person, they're going to be around the team dynamics, our department KPIs, things like that. If I'm talking to the VP or the director who now runs an entire thing and they have a budget to worry about and they're worried about downsizing, or this market's terrible, or the customer base is falling off, and how are we going to make up these revenues, then I'm going to be asking questions that are part of their scope, because I want them to understand that I understand the challenges they're going through, if nothing else, by their questions. By their responses to my question. And my question helps show empathy and that I understand. And then same thing as you go up the chain. So have questions prepared that that person is going to be able to resonate with, but also is going to show your understanding. Now, often the answers to those questions are really going to be able to help you at the end of the day be more competitive in the interview process, because then you can squirrel away that information that they gave you. And then when you walk into the next office 5 minutes later, you now know more about the company than you did before. And you can use that information almost like you're already part of the team. And it gives, again, that next person up some instant feelings that, oh, this person knows what's going on. How they even know that information? Well, truthfully, their subordinate told you, or the manager told you, but you're able to use that information, showing that you can, I guess, be agile in the interview process and nothing is all scripted. So that's the first thing, okay? Great question. You're always going to get it. Do you have any questions for me? Next, what professional accomplishments are you most proud of? The more senior you are in your career, the more this becomes a problem. And the reason why I like to say that is because we all struggle to limit either A, we talk about ourselves too much because we just love ourselves and we just want to go, go, go. We don't recognize that the other person just doesn't care that much and that you've already answered their question. And maybe the question wasn't even theirs. It was just a scripted question they don't even care about the response to, but they have to ask. If you give a long 5-6 minute answer about how great you are and what you accomplished, you might turn people off, okay? I think a common theme is that not everyone's going to like everything about you, and you have to recognize that. And another common theme that I've discussed in the past is the resume is no place to be humble. The interview is where you're humble. So your resume is where you show your arrogance because, again, it's on paper. It comes across well. But the interview, it's all about my team. It's all about we. Yes, you led the team, and yes, there's a point of humility that is offsetting as well, or you put them off. But by saying, these things, you're really going to be, by focusing on your team, you're going to ensure that they're going to be more excited to hire you as a leader of people, because they know that you're behind the decisions as well. All right, 2 more questions, and then we're going to get to Russ. What's your dream job? Very simple answer. This is my dream job. You don't say your job is my dream job, because guess what? Now you're gunning for them. They're not going to hire you. Okay? Don't answer that. What's your dream job? I really don't, it's something to do with this and this. Use elements of the job that they're hiring you into. If you've done that job before and you love that job, well, that's the answer. But be very careful around this answer, because there's a lot of ulterior motives that can be thought of by the interviewer when you ask this question, and they might assume a lot of things on your shoulders. And then the last question we'll talk about right now is walk me through your resume. This is a chance for you to spend 2 to 3 minutes max. I have sat through a 45-minute walk me through your resume discussion before, and it is painful. Again, you don't need to go into so much detail. If you struggled with trying to land your plane, as I like to say, as you're interviewing, then please talk to me so I can be sure that I can help you walk through your resume in a concise manner that the interviewer is going to care about and key in on, because we've all been part of those conversations where their eyes start to glaze over, or we start to disengage because it's just too much information. Now that we're 11 minutes into this, you might already be glazing over because I've given you too much information. But that's the purpose. Listen, you could pause it and come back. So anyway, so with that, now I'm very excited because for the first time, we are going to have one of my new friends. So through Hired How to Get the Job, I've been able to get acquainted with a great guy. His name is Russ Roberts. He came through a mutual connection of ours. And let me just tell you a little bit about Russ, and then I'll bring him in. And then I got a few questions for Russ, and we'll talk a little bit why he's here. But Russ, just here's his bio. He graduated Texas A&M with a journalism degree, and then he spent his first 10 years of his career as a professional journalist for NBC and CBS throughout multiple states. After that, he spent a 20-year career at ExxonMobil, ascending to various levels. And then most recently, Russ was hired as the president of a global communications firm delivering digital solutions to major oil and gas corporations, retailers, and defense industry clients. He's an expert in media relations, community engagement, and executive counsel. He's designed, developed, and delivered an executive coaching and training program with the University of Texas in Austin. So he can work both sides. He's an Aggie, but he's also able to connect with the Longhorns and give back. And he's now actively in the job market, looking for a position and company that best matches his skills and passions as he focuses in public and government affairs roles. With that, Russ, thank you so much for joining. I absolutely appreciate it. It's been a pleasure to get to know you these past few months.
Thank you, Tony. I appreciate that. And yes, I am. I've got a son who went to UT and I went to A&M. So yeah, we just kind of bridged the gap. So it's all part of how you have to do your job. I'm going to practice one of the things you taught me. So to put a bow on my experience, which is kind of my resume, 30 years broken into 3 chunks. The first 10 years as a journalist, the next 20 in corporate America, the first 10 of that mostly focused on media relations in non-supervisory roles. Then the last 10 years, mostly management, operations, higher level roles that kind of got me to the job to become president of a local company here in Houston. Until I came to the realization that after about 18 months, the passion I have to really grow young teams and to develop people, I wasn't able to spend the balance of time doing that. So I bowed out and I gave 30 days of transition, as you should, and everything was fine. So that's where I am today. I'm looking for a role where I can go back and really pour into young people, because I think that's where my strengths are.
Great. Well, and I really appreciate that, because I thought what would be interesting to have you on here is because obviously you've been a senior executive in a global company that had 1,000 full-time and contract employees around the world. And you've been on both sides of the spectrum for the first time ever, because this is actually the first time you're actually looking for a job in your career. And though it was by your choice, which a lot of people who are looking at wasn't by their choice, all the issues are still there. You still have to find the next job. You still have to go figure out the next steps to get hired. And that's how you and I become really good friends. So first thing I think would be really interesting to people to hear is, as a president of an organization, when you were hiring people, let's put the technical stuff aside because that's going to be very specific and case specific based on the individual roles you're hiring for. But on the non-technical side, or as I like to call the EQ or the EI skills, what were you looking for in your candidates to display during the interview process? What would you often gauge a lot of your hiring off of when it came to your assessments?
Sure. One word: authenticity. And you can glean that in the first 5 or 10 minutes of the interview. There's a number of questions that we all ask, but I want to find out, is the person humble? Are they willing to be a team member? Everything you just mentioned. And can they recognize that they're not perfect and may not be the best fit for the job, but they are at the time of their career ready to move into something where you can grow them. So with my perspective being not finding the perfect candidate who just matches and plugs in like a light bulb, it's a person who you can grow and teach and maybe learn from. Every good leader hires people that are as smart or smarter than them, or that you can get them to that point to where they're smarter. So authenticity. The only thing that ever turned me off was the person who thought they probably could do the job already. They should have been doing the job already. And more likely after 3 months, they'd be doing my job as they're eyeing my office and looking at all the things that they would put in different places. So authenticity, short answer.
And that's a really good point. You know, you just mentioned that last part there. I often talk to candidates, and I'm sure you're not like this, but maybe you can speak on it, where the client or the candidate that I think as a recruiter is the best fit is almost intimidating to the hiring manager, and they don't want to hire them because they're afraid they're going to outshine them, versus what I think is correct. You should be pouring into your people so they can take your job and you can move on to the next thing. But have you ever had, I guess, a situation where you've hired a candidate or you've looked at a candidate, you go, you know what, you're too focused on what I do and not so much focused on what I need you to do, that you didn't hire them? Maybe not so much that they're going to take your job, but that they wanted your job enough that they wouldn't even be concerned with the job that they were hiring for?
A few times. Usually in the pre-screening process, I was pretty good at figuring that part out. But again, it's all on paper. And when you see them in real life, sometimes you look at it and think, there's no way this is you. And there are other people that say, where is all the stuff that you just told me? It should be on this piece of paper here. I almost didn't pick you because it wasn't there. So there is real validity in putting everything you need to in that piece of paper to get in the door. But at that point, back off and be a team player. I've had a few, unfortunately, that I've had to let go that just did not connect. And again, that was pretty early in the process of once they started, you figure it out pretty quickly that it's not going to work.
Well, and did you figure out something in the interview process that you said, hey, look, you know, I'm looking for authenticity. And then at a certain point, I realized they were being inauthentic. How long did it often take you to figure that sort of stuff out?
So let me back up just a little bit. Their authenticity is good because I think they mean well. They're saying the right things. You can tell they're truthful and they're really honest about it. But the work ethic piece is after about the first 30 days, they've worked their way in. You've given them a little grace, but by the second and third month, you begin to see some of the real trends. They're either super hardworking, or they're leaving work early, or they're coming in a little bit late, and they're not as focused as they should be. And there are a lot of reasons for that. But you talk to them. But typically within that first 90 days, you've got a really good indication of whether they were as committed as they said they were. Nobody's perfect, right? I can't hire a perfect person every time, but track record's pretty good. I've made a few mistakes, but so did they do, right? So they weren't the good fit, neither was I in discerning that.
Well, that's good because I always say recruiting is an art and a science. Hiring is an art and a science. You're matching up some pretty easy job description bullets with a resume, but then it's a matter of personalities, which is the art form of it. And there's a stat that I've said a lot, which you just spoke to that stat, frankly. You said within 90 days. There's a stat that Bamboo HR did pre-COVID, which said, you know, out of 1,000 U.S. employees, 31% quit within 6 months, and 68% of those don't last 3 months. So that means 210 out of 1,000 quit or are fired within 3 months. And you just spoke, it's never technical ability, you just spoke to it. It's because they can't walk the walk longer than 3 months before their natural tendencies start to come out. And you can fake anything in an interview process, but that's really why when you're interviewing, it's critical to focus in on these non-technical skills, because the technical stuff is really easy to vet with a couple of questions if they understand what you're talking about or not. Yeah. The non-technical stuff, that's really where we got to hone in. So great. So thanks, Russ. So, okay, so with that, we're going to roll into our questions and answers. So again, if you're watching, you have a question, please type it in. I will absolutely bring up the live questions first. Russ will hang out with us. I do have a couple more questions for Russ. And so so if you have any questions for, for a guy like Russ, feel free to ask them as well. But first, my next question for you, Russ, while we're rolling into now the Q&A section. And actually, you know what? I'm still getting new at this, Russ. Let me go to our little, just so people know what we're talking about. There we go. There we go. See, we're all human, right? Okay, so my next question for Russ is, when you're, since you've been employed your entire life and you're actually not looking for a job, what is the most disappointing or surprising thing that you've come across now at this stage of your career?
So I can answer it both, because I've sat on this side of the chair now for a few months looking, and I've sat on the other side. So I think the most disappointing thing is getting that rejection letter that says, unfortunately, you're not qualified. Well, after 20 plus years in the business, anything I apply for, and many of the folks out there listening are 20 plus years, you're qualified. You know you can do this job. The question is, why did they not pick you? And that's the frustrating part, because if you've worked hard to hone your skills and you know you're the right person for the job, not getting selected makes you begin to question, it wasn't my skills, was it my seniority, was it something else that I can't control? And that's the challenge that I face, because I wouldn't apply for a job if I didn't think I was good at it or could do the job. But it's really what's behind the response. And the other thing is, sometimes you get nothing. You just wait. It's terrible. If you don't like me, tell me. I'd rather you tell me face up, nope, you're not right, than make me wait 4 months and think, well, maybe I am.
Yeah, no, and often it's just because, people don't like conflict, so we're trying to avoid the conflict. Or truthfully, I've been working with so many hiring managers where, Russ, you'd be the third candidate. And we just want to keep Russ warm because we really like him, but there's just something we don't love about him. And in my experience, the third place candidate never becomes the first place candidate, or if they do, they don't last. There's some reason that we can't articulate why we don't like you, Russ, but we just keep you on the hook forever because you're the safety net that is just really an illusion of a safety net, because we have no desire to hire you. And unfortunately, companies don't quite figure that out all the time. So when they don't figure that out, they keep people on the hook way too long. So that's a really good point. And it's unfortunate that, yeah, but it's what I guess what's nice is that if I know of a guy like you with your pedigrees experiencing the same problems as many of my other clients, then it makes us feel somewhat normal at the end of the day, because you do, humility aside, you have a very impressive background. So great. All right, so let me take another question that I got, which I'd love for you to get your thoughts on this. This was a question I got this week, because lately I've been working with a lot of senior people on their resumes, Russ, and everyone else. And what's a common mistake people are making on their resume? I wanted to make sure I address this because I do talk to a lot of people who have strong tenures. And I think, and I actually worked with a lot of people recently, Russ, who have similar backgrounds to you, communications, PR, marketing. And I think, and they're executives, so they're professionally trained to communicate well on paper. They're professionally trained to communicate well verbally. But all that stuff is counterintuitive when you're writing a resume, because you want to make the sentence or the bullet a sentence, and a bullet is not a sentence. So you start putting in extra words to make it sound and flow better, but nobody reads these bullets. They only want fragments of sentences at most. I don't want a complete thought. I want to start with a verb, most likely a past tense verb if you're no longer with the company, and I want it to end with your accomplishment. But I don't need to know, thus this created. I don't need. Looks like we lost Russ there, or we lost me there. Either way, let me see if I can get Russ back on. There he is. Sorry about that, Russ. But so is that a common mistake that you come across too when you're writing your resume? You're trying to, when you were first working on it, put too much in there?
Sure. I think I've rewritten it no less than 30 times, because as communicators, you're always editing, right? That's our biggest challenge. But it's a fine balance between what I know I would have read and what I know I want to put across. So you've got to really work hard in that bullet to make it succinct, but also have it have something of value for them to pick out. And sometimes it's the keywords, as you say, and other times it's just simply stating what the challenge was, what the outcome was, and what your role was in it. And that's hard, even for communicators. That's hard to put that into a short bullet. But I'd also say, as a hiring manager at the time, if I find a candidate at the top is really good, I'm going to continue to read. And it doesn't matter how long to me it is. It's always one page. And no, it doesn't have to be that. If I'm interested, I'm going to keep reading. If I lose interest in the first page or so, I'll start to scan what jobs they had, and then I probably put them in the almost pile. But again, your comments are great. Be boastful on that resume, because that's the one chance you have to get their attention. In TV, we used to say you had a story every night for 45 to 1 minute. That was it. If you couldn't grab their attention in that amount of time, you weren't going to win their trust. Well, in here, if you can't get their attention in the first 30 seconds of your resume, you're probably not going to win the job.
Yeah. It's really interesting. So you look at things through the hiring manager's perspective, and I look at things through the recruiter's perspective, hey, sorry about that, everybody. I managed to lose my internet at the exact wrong time. And as a result, not sure how this looked for the first time, but with that, and I had a couple of live questions too. So if Sal, if you get to rejoin us, Kayla, if you get to rejoin us, feel free to ask your questions again, because I did see them, but then as I had to come back, they're all missing. So I apologize for that. But with that, thanks, Russ, for that information. I appreciate that. And again, sorry about you go from being a professional broadcaster than being on this, and this shows you the challenges of the world that I live in once in a while. But here comes a question that we had from Kayla. So they also tell HR professionals to never tell a candidate why you didn't hire them, because you could either sue you. That's exactly right. So that gives you a little background, Russ. And you and I have talked about that, is that, people at the end of the day, they're not going to want to give the information because they're not as comfortable, or they're not as well trained, they're not as able to give all that information out. They don't know where the boundary is of what I can say and what I can't say. So let me just not say anything at all and just say we went with somebody else.
That's fine. I did the same thing. I would never tell them why. My comment on the other end was we kind of know that that's a slippery slope, so stay away from it. Good point.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm going to drop Russ down. I'm going to I got a few more questions that I've received this week that I'm going to answer. But again, if anyone has any live questions, if they hung with us or came back to join us, feel free to pop those questions in, and me and Russ will handle them as we need to. But I'm going to take a few more questions that I have. And so with that, another question I've gotten or received a lot was Zoom calls. Okay, so we're all doing interviews via Zoom calls, and actually I'll probably bring Russ back in for a second after to ask his opinion on this, because I think this is one of those that it's an opinion question. Okay, so when you're interviewing via Zoom, do you wear the same thing you were going to be interviewing with via a live interview? And my personal opinion is yes, because I want to, again, but I'm more of a treating the person I'm talking with respect. And I feel like if I put on a coat and tie, if I was going to walk into the office, then I should put on a coat and tie if I'm going to be on the Zoom call, because it's even more convenient for me to take it off. And it's even easier for me to put it on. Often people will say, hey, I couldn't do the coat and tie because I came from the office and they would have seen me wearing this. And it would have raised a red flag that I was looking for something. But with that, that's my personal opinion. And as I think about this, I've actually hired several CEOs for private equity companies where the board of directors were on Zoom across the pond, and they were interviewing candidates over here. And I can think about the majority of them didn't have the tie on for a CEO role. They had a sports coat and a collared shirt, much like this. So I guess, Russ, what's your opinion on that one?
I think depending on the job, if it's an office job or a job that requires interaction with senior executives, probably best to wear the coat and the tie for the first time. Again, it's my opinion. If you're going for a retail job or an outside job or a surf shop job, if you show up in a coat and tie, they're probably going to just discount you because they've obviously chosen a different style. It's a respect issue. You said that at the beginning. And it's a personal preference. If you're not comfortable in a coat and tie and you're going to do really bad, then I would say not wear that. Go open collar. I'm dealing with that now. I'm still trying to decide what I want to wear this one coming up.
That's fun. Okay, cool. Thanks for that, Russ. All right, and we'll do one more question. Again, if you have a live question, feel free to bring it in, but I do have one more question this week that I received. So one more of my questions this week was, and this was a really good conversation with one of my clients. She's interviewing for a new company and she's leaving her previous employer who she's still with because they're doing some unethical things. And she's brought it up with no avail. And frankly, they're starting to ask her to do some ethical things. So when she gets asked the inevitable question, why are you looking to move? What does she say to that? So here's my answer for that. And I won't put Russ on the spot for this question, but here's my answer for that. Look, when you're leaving an organization, you want to focus on the future. So you don't ever give the full story on an interview if it's going to incriminate somebody else or possibly, hurts the organization, but you want to be authentic. So the first thing is you want to focus on the things you can speak about. And you know this question is going to come. So think about the things you can speak about. So think about why you're attracted to the new position. Why are you excited about this interview or this company? Because they're going to say, hey, why are you looking to make a move? And you can say, well, I've been there for 6 years and I'm not as passionate about that organization anymore because of the culture difference. I'm more of an outgoing person and this culture is more very formal and structured. And I'm really excited about your opportunity because I understand that your culture, or I believe I understand that your culture is like this, and this opportunity will let me grow. And I've kind of gone stagnant at the other company after being there for 6 years. There's really not much more I can learn. That's a real easy way to say that. Now, if they push a little further and go, well, I've heard some rumors that organization has some weird things going on, you'd be like, I can't really speak to that. And I'm not going to really badmouth my company. They've been with me for 6 years. I really appreciate them. Blah, blah, blah. Now, if they push you one more time, you now have approval to say something to the effect of, look, at the end of the day, I just don't get along very well with my boss. I've dealt with him for 6 years, but I've talked to him and we've had communication, but it's a respect thing, I think, more than anything else. Like, I obviously respect him and he's a brilliant person or she's a brilliant person, but I feel like it goes both ways. And we've hit the point now where I figured after 5 or 6 years, I'd be an equal team player and I'm still not. And I never was. And I just kind of see that's never going to change here. Now, again, you've been able now to show your current, hopefully future boss, that you're not quick to throw someone under the bus, and you really didn't throw anybody under the bus. You just said, and it took them a long time to pull it out of you, what your issues were with the old team that you're part of. That's going to do a couple of things. One, it's going to make sure that they understand that you actually care about the company you're leaving. So in the event you ever leave them, inevitably you will, whether it's death, whether it's retirement, at some point you're leaving the next company. You're going to do it in a professional way, and you're also going to be also authentic and truthful with how you presented everything and all that information, and they're going to be attracted to that, because remember, we like humility in the interview, and this gets you to showcase a side of your personality. So in that question too, what was interesting is that showcases a certain side of the personality that you're going to have to counter, though, because you just answered a question saying, I demand respect. Now, you didn't say you demand respect, but you said in your answer, after 6 years, they don't respect me, which gives me, a recruiter, an indication that maybe after 6 years, you don't deserve to be respected. So it's going to be really important that your next answers highlight your accomplishments and how you're humble and how you're a team player. And we had a phenomenal 30-minute conversation about this during one of my one-on-one coaching sessions with her. But with that, hopefully, I knew that helped her, but hopefully if someone else in the audience is resonating with that information, that'll be true to them. So again, I apologize for our technical issues we had today, and we will get better at it, but that's just where we are. Russ, thank you so much for joining us today. I really do appreciate it. I hope anybody who's watched this, if you liked it, please give us a thumbs up. Please give us a little bright sign of symbol. Share it with your network if you think anyone in your network can benefit from this information. And as always, if you need any help getting a job or learning some information about how to get the next job, please reach out to me and I'll be happy to help. With that, see you next time. Thanks so much. Bye.